Welcome back, folks. Today I want to go over the principles of marksmanship and tips and tricks that you can use to help improve upon your marksmanship on a physical level. We'll get into the mental aspects of marksmanship and how a lot of times shooting can be more of a mental game than it is a physical game at another date. But today I want to talk to you about the basics of marksmanship, the true principles that no matter who you are, no matter what style of shooting you do, you incorporate these in one manner or another. The first thing I want to go over is stance. Now, whether or not you choose to use the Weaver stance or the isosceles stance, that's up to you. I don't really care which one. If you get on the internet, you'll find all kinds of people saying, well, you have to use isosceles because it's an athletic stance and Weaver is a FUD stance and it shouldn't be used anymore. If that's the ideology you want to have, go for it. There's no crime in being wrong. The idea is pick a stance and go with it. If you pick Weaver, great. If you pick isosceles, great. If you mix the two like I do, perfect. Do whatever works for you. The two most popular are isosceles and Weavers. The reason we want to have stance down so well is it's the foundation that everything else is built on. If you've got a good sight alignment, good trigger control, if you've got a good grip, but your stance sucks and you're wobbling back and forth, well then you're probably not going to get a desirable result. The second point I want to go over is grip, and grip applies across whatever platform you're shooting. I don't care if it's handgun, rifle, shotgun. You need to have the proper grip. Now, what type of gun you're using dictates what type of grip you need. A semi-automatic Glock handgun might require a little different grip than a Smith & Wesson revolver, just the same as a bolt-action rifle is going to take possibly a different grip than a pump-action shotgun. Now, you may find that some grips interchange and work well one with others, and that's great. If you find a grip that works well for you and you can use it across multiple platforms, go for it. But you're going to have to know multiple grips because there's no way you're going to use the same grip that you are for your lever action rifle as you are your handgun. So it doesn't matter. Find a grip that works, stick with it. When you're new, try different grips. Try spacing your forehand out. Try spacing that forehand back in. Try moving your grip on the buttstock. Maybe you're a thumb over the back. Maybe you're a thumb down the side. It doesn't really matter which one you go with. Go with something solid and make sure it's a good grip. There are some things that were bad when they came out and they've only got worse with time. And I may catch some flack for this, and so be it. But the old teacup grip, this is for handguns, holding your handgun here and coming up underneath of it. I don't know too many world-class shooters nor good combat shooters that use that. If you can sight one and show it to me, I'll eat my words on that, and that's fine. I've got no problem doing it. But I'd stay away from those kind of grips. Typically, what is solid? A good two-handed thumbs forward, two-handed encircling. These are, of course, for pistol. You can sort that out on your own. Those are good, solid grips. For a rifle, thumb over the back, forearm out. That works really well. A slight variation is go from here to here. Instead of having your thumb wrapped over the top, have your thumb wrapped around that side or laying forward on the side of that gun. It really doesn't matter which one you use, just find the one that works good for you. The next principle of marksmanship I want to discuss with you is sight alignment and sight picture. These have a critical difference here. Sight alignment is how your sights are aligned. That may seem self-explanatory. Where people get confused is sight picture. So you get a good sight alignment, you align your sights, and then you transpose that onto your target. That gives you a sight picture. Alignment is how the sights are aligned. Picture is those aligned sights being placed on target. There is a critical difference here. You got to keep that in mind. but you need to have good sight alignment, good sight picture. Now, what is good sight alignment? Well, that changes depending on the type of sight that you use. Of course, at its base, good sight alignment is a sight alignment that allows you to hit what you're shooting at. I think we can all agree that would be a solid sight alignment. I want to talk more about the technical details of a sight alignment. So if you have like a pistol sight where you have a post and typically 2 notches in the back, you want even spacing of light in between those posts, and you want it to be nice and level across the top. If you're shooting a ghost ring sight picture or an peep and post, some people call it an aperture. There's all kinds of different names for it. Why in the shooting community we have to have 50 names for the same thing, I don't know, but it is what it is. An aperture or a peep and post sight is a post sight with a perfectly centered rear. So when you come up, you are looking through that hole and your post should be perfectly aligned. Now, everyone's eyes see things slightly differently, but the human eye naturally centers that post in the circle of bright light. You may have to adjust your stance, adjust your grip, adjust where your shoulder pocket is. Those things are all variables that you may have to adjust, but naturally you will line that up. For me, I've found that too big of a ghost ring means that I have a hard time aligning that. So a lot of times I will put in a sight reducer or an aperture reducer. Something like what you see on this Marlin 336. You'll notice that I have a Williams peep sight here. We'll get that up close to you. But back here, this actually unscrews and it's fairly tight, so forgive me if I struggle getting it off on camera. But this sight actually removes and you can use it as a smaller or a larger diameter. This is the largest aperture you can get, and then if you want larger, you remove the aperture and you just use the ghost ring sight that's in the side of there. This is a hunting rifle for me, so you don't want too tight of an aperture in very lighting conditions and hunting situations. The tighter an aperture you go, the harder you're going to have of a time of getting enough light to be able to see. For me, I find that these large apertures are the way to go, and for those curious about the setup that I've got, this is the largest aperture you can use from Skinner sights. Now you may notice this is a Williams sight and I'm using a Skinner aperture. Most sights, not all, but most sights use the same thread patterns. So Williams sights, you can put Skinner apertures in and it's all perfectly fine. And then you'll notice up here up front, I've got a standard blade with a little bit of red nail polish. Nothing too fancy. The next principle of marksmanship I want to talk to you about is breathing, or the control thereof your breathing. And what I mean by that, there are 2 commonly accepted breathing methods that work really well. You can either do box breathing, which many of you who are either musicians or sports athletes, some of you may be familiar with this. A box breathing is breathing in for a count. So we'll use an example of 4. So you breathe in for 4 counts, 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold your breath for 2 or 4. Figure out which works best for you. Exhale for 4 counts, and then hold that breath for 2 to 4 counts, whichever works for you. For it to be perfect box breathing, you would use in for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, and hold for 4. And that gives you those perfect 4 sides. But I've come across a lot of people who use 4-2, 4-2, and that works really well for them. You figure out which one works best for you. The other commonly accepted breathing form, and this is the one that I use myself, is your natural breathing pause or natural respiratory pause. So when you breathe in and breathe out, there's a pause right there. That pause when you breathe out is when you would squeeze your triggers. So you can get on your sights, get everything aligned, be on target, come in, and squeeze the trigger during that pause. And that works best for a lot of people. That's what works best for me. If you have a technique that works other than these two, hey, share them in the comments. Maybe that'll work for somebody else. I'm not here to tell you that these are the only methods that work. And I'm not telling you that this is what you have to do. What I'm telling you is over a decade of experience in my life, this is what has worked for me. You may find people who've got different experiences and different things work for them. If that works for you, great. If what I'm showing you works for you, fantastic. The next thing I want to talk to you about trigger control. And one of the people I think who illustrates this best is Clint Smith. Clint Smith, for those that don't know, he is the owner and kind of the face of the Thunder Ranch Firearms Training School. They are one of the most, if not the most, premier schools in the nation. Clint Smith worked under Colonel Jeff Cooper. He's got a great story. For those that are curious, go check out Thunder Ranch, check out Clint Smith on social media. Very, very well experienced man, a lot of good experience, a lot of good stories that you can learn from. One of the things that Clint Smith really hones in on a lot of his lectures and a lot of his demonstrations on the range is trigger control. Because it doesn't matter how good your stance is, how good your grip is, how good your sight alignment is. If you botch that trigger control, the shot's done. So we really got to focus in on that trigger control. For handguns, there are two primary trigger controls. You either have a press, P-R-E-S-S, like you would use for a striker-fired handgun, like a Glock, or you would use a stroke, S-T-R-O-K-E, like you're stroking an oar. You would use that for either a double action to single action, a double action only. A lot of revolvers use this. Some of the old SIG handgun designs use this. It doesn't matter which one you're shooting. Pick the appropriate one for the platform and go with it. A press is a clean, smooth press to the rear. You'll hear a lot of people say clean, smooth, straight press to the rear. I don't say straight that much. The reason being is when you look at your finger, if you extend it out at a 90-degree angle and you press back, your finger doesn't move perfectly straight. It wobbles a little bit, and that's okay. It doesn't have to be perfectly straight. Now, of course, you don't want a big S pattern. You don't want the gun shaking back and forth. But if there's a little bit of movement, that's okay. Same thing with a stroke. When you stroke the trigger, most triggers that are double action that have to be stroked take a considerable amount of movement to make work. And that's okay if there's a little bit of shift, so long as when you're breaking that shot, it's going where it needs to go, you're in the green. Now, on the other side of that, if you're doing this and there's so much movement that wherever you're putting the shot, you can't seem to make it work, then we need to go back and reevaluate what's going on. The final principle of marksmanship that I want to share with you is your follow through. And this can look like a lot of different things depending on what you're doing, what type of gun you're shooting, what type of shooting it is that you're doing. A follow through looks a lot different on a defensive or combat type pistol shot than it does on a swinging follow through when you're hunting upland birds. So these things can look different, but there's a few key elements. You want to stay on the gun, stay on the sights, and stay on the target. Don't bring your gun down or bring your gun down straight after. You want to keep your gun up, keep your gun up, keep your eyes on your sights, keep your sight on target as best as you can. Of course, recoil factoring into that, they're going to come off, which is my second point. You need to learn to be able to reset your sights efficiently. When you shoot a lot, and once you get a lot of good practice in, especially with handguns, you'll notice that your front sight will come up, and with proper recoil control, you will get it to settle right back down to where it was. And that should work out okay for you. The final aspect of a good follow through is your breathing reset. So if you're shooting that natural respiratory pause, that breaking your shot, well, then you want to come right back in and get ready for your next one. And how you breathe, how you reset that breath, that's up to you. I'm not here to tell you what's right and what's wrong. If you find it and it works for you and it's repeatable and you're getting good results, that's enough for me to call it good. Now, there's one thing that it's not necessarily a principle to marksmanship, but it is definitely incorporated with marksmanship, and that is your post-shot evaluation. So after your shot, check your stance. Did your feet kind of wobble when you took that shot? Check your grip. Did the recoil cause your grip to become compromised and you need to reset? Look at those kind of things. What could have knocked you off? What could have knocked you off balance? What could have changed? Anything that changed, we want to reset before our next shot, make some evaluations, make some adjustments, and see how those work. Once you realize that, hey, I'm coming up on my first shot's really clean, but the 3 after that kind of suck, well, that means something is changing after the recoil in that first shot, and that's okay, but you need to figure out what that is and iron that out. Get rid of that. A lot of times, the 2 biggest things that I see are a change in stance and a change in grip. Those are the 2 big things that I notice, 1 for myself and 2 in a lot of new shooters, especially shooters getting into centerfire rifles or shotguns. They'll kind of take their shot and then their feet bobble a little bit and then they kind of torque how they're holding the gun. You want to make sure it's good, solid, and repeatable every time you pull that trigger. So after you pull that trigger, go through and go ahead and reevaluate these things. All right, so now for some tips that will help you improve your marksmanship. The first and one of the biggest things that you can do, provided you have a new modern gun that is designed to be safe to do it with, is dry fire practice. It's free. You can do it at home. And again, with safe modern designs, it is safe. Don't take your 1903 Colt handgun out there and start doing that. But with your Glocks, your Smith & Wessons, modern revolvers, modern designs, it is safe to do. If you're unsure, check your owner's manual. If your owner's manual doesn't say whether or not it's safe, call up the company's customer service and ask. This is a common thing. Someone's going to have an answer for you. Dry fire, dry fire, dry fire. For every live shot that I take on a range, I've taken 5 to 10 dry shots right here in this basement. You know, yes, this basement is currently my recording studio, but it's also my reloading bench. Over here on the walls, I've got some targets taped up so I can do my dry fire. It's below grade, it's concrete. Should a live round happen to sneak off in here, the only thing that's going to be damaged is my hearing, and I'll probably need a new pair of shorts. But other than that, no one's going to get harmed. So find a good, safe place to do it. If you live in an apartment where every wall you've got neighbors something else, a good idea, if you have it, is a plate of body armor. Try that. Even 2A body armor with your 9mm handgun, it's probably going to get stopped. So work on that dry fire, get a safe place to do it, and do lots of it. The second thing I want you to do is get a 22. Ideally, if you've got the money, get a 22 rifle and a 22 pistol. Now, which rifle and pistol you get, I really don't care. Just get one. If you want to get a lever action 22 and a single action 22 handgun to go with it, like a Heritage Rough Rider or a Ruger single 6, hey, go for it. Great. If you want to get a 22 AR, like a Smith & Wesson M&P 22, and pair it up with a Smith & Wesson 22 compact, that's fine. Do that. It all works. My point is, get a 22 rifle and a handgun. My particular choice, the Ruger 1022 and the Ruger Mark IV. I like the original Mark IV over the 2245. That is strictly a personal preference. They're both great guns. Buy either one. Buy both if you got the money for it. They're both fantastic handguns. And 22 ammunition, the last time I checked, was about 4 to 5 cents around online with free shipping if you buy a case of it. And a case of 22 is like 4,000 to 6,000 rounds. It'll last most of you a long time. There's a couple of you out there that are going to burn through that pretty quick. But for most of us, that's going to last quite a long time. All right, my next two tips have to deal with live fire on the range. The first one is do live fire on the range. Dry fire is great. You can learn a lot from it, but at the end of the day, you're going to have a hard time seeing where your shots are hitting. And I know there's new fancy systems where you can get a laser and the target tells you exactly where you hit. And that kind of stuff's great. But there is no replacement for live fire. And I know some of these really new fancy whiz-bang systems simulate recoil and shoot lasers, and they hook up to your phone and your computer, and they do all kinds of great stuff. And guys, hear me, I'm not knocking that kind of stuff. What I am telling you is it's not a replacement for going out and actually shooting. I don't care if you shoot 9, 40, 45, 357, 44, 45 Colt. I don't care if it's 223, 308, 30-06, 600 nitro. I don't care what you do. There is no replacement for live fire. Get out there and shoot. If you can't get out there and shoot with your main stuff, hey, there comes your 22s. That stuff's cheap. Even for most of us, even if you can't afford a case of it, you can probably afford a 100-round sleeve of it when you go to the gun shop. So check that kind of stuff out. If you're having a hard time getting it, hey, save up every check. You go out and buy a 100-round sleeve of 22, or maybe you go out and buy a brick of 500 of 22. That kind of stuff builds up over time, guys. And if I could turn the camera and you could see the stash of 22 I've got sitting over here, I'm set to shoot 22 for a long, long time. Now, granted, it's greatly diminished because if you've been living under a rock for the past 5 years, ammunition hadn't been so great. But we're coming out of it. I'm replenishing the stock of both 22 and regular ammunition. That's why I'm down here at this reloading bench so much. Just get out there and shoot and evaluate your shots. We're looking for quality over quantity. I would rather you go out and shoot 50 rounds and really check on yourself every time. A hit, great. What did you do right that made it a hit? A miss, what went wrong that caused it to be a miss? I want you to know both why you hit and why you missed. And know the reason you hit is not because you wake up and you're just the greatest person on earth. There's a reason you hit, there's a reason you miss. You need to be able to distinguish these two. Well, folks, that's all I've got for you today. Go out there, get shooting, get time in on your stance, on your grip, on your breathing, on your trigger control. Get out there, get in those principles of marksmanship, get out there with a 22 and learn. Man, 22 is a lot cheaper to burn through than 9mm is, and the same principles apply. Not saying don't ever shoot your carry guns. You need to shoot those because you need to be used to the recoil with those. But you can learn a lot with 22s on the range. You can learn a lot with dry fire. And please evaluate every shot you take. If it's a hit, know why, and if it's a miss, know why, because there's a reason for every one of them, guys. Until next time, this is Chuck with Practical Marksmanship Reloaded.